one wish for you. I hope you have someone in your life that is as excited to see you as Mark Carney was. Mark Carney went down to Washington this week. We were all hoping that he would come back with the deal he promised. Here are 4 things you need to know about Mark Carney's visit with Donald Trump. Spoiler alert, he came home without a deal. The entire pitch by the Liberal Party for Canadians to vote for them was that they would solve this problem. He promised that he was the guy you hired in a crisis, that he knew how to negotiate, that he'd get a win for Canada. And remember, this isn't Conservatives holding him to some unreasonable standard that we made up. This is the standard he set for himself.
If there's not a crisis, you wouldn't be seeing me. I am most useful. I'm honest. I'm most useful in crisis. I'm not that good in peacetime.
He could have been honest with Canadians and said, listen, I have no idea how to handle Donald Trump any more than the next guy, but I'll give it my best shot. That's not what he did. He looked every Canadian voter in the eye and he made a solemn vow that he would fix this, that he would get a deal by July 21st.
And yesterday, President Trump and I agreed to continue to pursue those negotiations, intensify them towards a deal within the coming 30 days.
It's now October and still no deal. Remember, during the election campaign, it was all about elbows up, and Mark Carney was going to be the tough guy that could negotiate a win with Donald Trump.
You are a transformative president. And now, and I'm running out of time, but this is, in many respects, the most important.
The merger of Canada and the United States.
That wasn't where I was going.
It's a good thing you don't need elbows to come home empty-handed. What could be worse than coming home without a deal? How about promising Donald Trump that you'll send $1 trillion of Canadian investments into the United States? I know it's hard to believe, but watch this clip.
We are the largest foreign investor in the United States. $500 billion in the last 5 years alone, probably $8 trillion in the next 5 years if we get the agreement that we expect to get.
$1 trillion of our money? Mark Carney is promising to send $1 trillion Canadian dollars into the United States to build factories, sawmills, auto plants there instead of here at home. Now, what's his defense? His defense is that it's going to be private sector money, not better. What that means is that he's going to create the conditions here to send investment dollars there. Mark Carney is either going to provide an incentive to Canadians who invest in the U.S. with either tax breaks or some other reward, or he's going to create the conditions here that actually drives out that investment. So, for example, he's keeping the production cap, the industrial carbon tax, the shipping ban, and all of Trudeau's tax hikes, basically saying to Canadian investors, you can't make a profit here, so put your money to work in the United States. And he actually offered to Donald Trump that his policies would increase the amount of money leaving Canada for the U.S. from $500 billion to $1 trillion.
Well, we now know why the U.S. president wanted this prime minister in power so badly. A weak leader whose high taxes and anti-development laws are sending billions of dollars and thousands of jobs out of this country. 86,000 jobs lost. And yesterday, the prime minister promised the president that he would increase Canadian investment in the U.S. by $1 trillion if he gets the agreement that he expects to get. Mr. Speaker, in exchange for $1 trillion of job losses in Canada, will he at least get an end to the U.S. auto tariffs that are killing jobs for our workers in Ontario?
As the president said yesterday, the Prime Minister of Canada is a tough negotiator. We will get a great deal.
Give me $1 trillion and even I will say something nice about this. I think we're beginning to see how it is that the president has been able to bulldoze over this prime minister. He won't even stand up when he is confronted by the Americans.
The third thing you need to know is not only was there not a deal in general, but specifically auto and lumber was left completely off the table. This is devastating news for every single auto worker. The U.S. has specifically said that there will be no deal that allows Canadian cars to be sold in the United States.
Can we make a deal with Canada?
I think it's really complex. I think this is really complex because they have been basically feeding off of us for decades upon decades upon decades, right? They have their socialist regime, and it's basically feeding off of America. I mean, the president calls that out all the time. Why do we make cars in Canada? Why do we do our films in Canada? Come on. So I think the president's going to have, I think it's going to be a fascinating meeting. I'm glad I'm going to be there listening, but it's going to be a fascinating meeting tomorrow.
That was Trump's Commerce Secretary basically saying that Mark Carney has failed to protect Canada's auto sector. Already, production shifts are moving to the United States. Already, the big three automakers are making investment decisions, and they are not choosing Canada because of Mark Carney's failure to do what he promised and to get a deal that protects Canadian auto workers. Meanwhile, there have already been devastating job losses in the lumber sector as punishing U.S. softwood lumber duties continue to hammer Canadian workers. Remember, the previous Conservative government was successful in negotiating a softwood lumber deal with both Republican and Democratic presidents. And the last thing is the whole shift in tone. Remember during the election when Mark Carney said this?
And someone who worships Donald Trump will kneel down before him, not stand up to him.
Now that he doesn't need your votes, he kneels there like a pylon as the president skates circles around him, laughing and joking. Carney's smiling and winking as Donald Trump again makes jokes about Canada becoming the 51st state. He sits there and just takes it over and over again and actually seems to enjoy it. Donald Trump is killing Canadian jobs and making jokes about annexation, and Mark Carney just sits there and laughs along with him.
You are a transformative president.
That's a hell of a compliment. But the ultimate conclusion to this trip is it all makes sense now. It is now abundantly clear why Donald Trump specifically wanted Mark Carney to be prime minister. Because Donald Trump gets whatever he wants with Carney in power. Mark Carney is keeping all the Trudeau-era policies that force Canadians to sell our energy at a discount, subsidizing the U.S. He's keeping in all the high-tax regime that makes investors choose the U.S. instead of Canada. And he specifically promised Donald Trump $1 trillion more of investment. No wonder they get along so well together. Mark Carney got what he wanted. Donald Trump endorsed him, and he won the election. And Donald Trump is getting what he wanted, $1 trillion of Canadian investment, putting Americans to work. You know, we started this off with a little bit of a joke about Mark Carney gushing over Donald Trump, but none of this is actually funny. Canadians are losing their jobs. That's so many people sitting around the dinner table not knowing how they're going to make their mortgage payment. It's dreams shattered and businesses going bankrupt. We need a conservative government that's going to fight for Canada, that's going to fight to get those investment dollars flowing to Canada to put Canadians to